The New York Giants completed their first day of mandatory minicamp on Tuesday in East Rutherford, New Jersey. Ed Valentine of Big Blue View here on the Big Blue View YouTube channel to discuss some of what we saw and some of what we learned on Tuesday. Please like, share, and subscribe to support the work here on the channel. Giants held their first workout of the 2-day mandatory minicamp. Giants will work again on Wednesday before hosting an organization-wide barbecue on Thursday, and then breaking for the summer. Let's go over some of the things that we saw and learned on Tuesday. First thing, we talk a lot about quarterback Daniel Jones and his rehab from his torn ACL. Jones did not really practice on Tuesday. He did individual work, but the Giants didn't do the 7-on-7 session that Jones has participated in throughout OTAs. Head coach Brian Daboll chose to only do 11-on-11 and chose to keep the quarterback out of that particular session. Jones wasn't happy about it. Daboll admitted that the quarterback wasn't happy about it. Jones said it wasn't his favorite thing that he didn't get to do 7-on-7, but said that that's the coach's job, not his. Jones did say, more important than anything else, he did say that he is absolutely certain that he will be ready to participate in training camp from day one. He said that right now he feels healthy. The knee feels good. It feels stable. It feels strong. Said that he can do everything right now in terms of cutting and moving and planting and running full out on that knee. So that's good news for the New York Giants that Jones will be ready to go week one or day one of training camp. And of course, then, by extension, week one of the regular season. So sounds like all systems go for Jones. There was a video posted of Jones on the sideline, moving around, running, doing some twisting and turning. Looked healthy, looked to be moving well. Looked like there are no issues. So if you go by that video, then Jones isn't just saying that he feels healthy. It looks like he feels healthy. He was asked on Tuesday why he's not wearing a brace. He's only wearing a sleeve on that knee. And he said that was not his decision. He said that decision was made by Giants doctors and trainers, said it's not necessary. So looks like all systems go for Jones with that right knee. Looks like he'll be healthy for training camp. And looks like Jones, unless something unforeseen happens, Jones will be the starter. Drew Lock will be the backup. All right, I did want to talk a little bit about the relationship between Daniel Jones and Malik Nabers. Saw some photos early in training camp of Jones or early in OTAs, of Jones and Nabers talking together, working together a little bit. Obviously, Jones not participating in 11-on-11s sort of limits Jones' ability to really form a relationship, really build some chemistry with the Giants' first round pick. And obviously, we know that Nabers, before the draft, had said some I want to say curious things about the Giants' quarterback situation. Sounded like he wasn't all in, wasn't thrilled with the idea of catching passes from Daniel Jones. And Nabers, mind you, is only 20 years old, may not be incredibly media polished at this point, but Nabers spoke to media again on Tuesday, and Nabers, he didn't exactly sound sound sold on Daniel Jones. He didn't exactly sound thrilled about Jones, and maybe he was trying to simply credit the players, the quarterbacks, Drew Lock, Tommy DeVito, Nathan Rourke, that the Giants have been putting out there. But here's what Nabers said. He said, when Daniel comes back, I'm sure he's going to be helpful to the offense. But right now, we just focus on the guys we've got in right now. And, that sounds like what you say about a guy who's hurt and isn't going to be around at all. It doesn't sound like what you say about a quarterback who is actually participating and practicing and is there every day. I don't know what to make of that. I don't know if that's just Nabers, not being polished and not saying exactly the right thing. I don't know if it's nothing. Um, but you as an organization, I'm sure the Giants would like for him to say, Daniel and I have worked together as much as we can. Our relationship is good. We're building as much chemistry as we can. Given the constraints on Jones, um, you would like him to say something complimentary about Jones. I mean, Jalen Hyatt the other day probably went to an extreme in complimenting Jones, but I think you would have liked for Nabers to say something a bit more, as I said, complimentary toward Jones, but maybe I'm making too much out of it. We'll see how that all works out. We'll see if Jones is the quarterback. We'll see how long he's the quarterback this year. We'll see if he's the quarterback next year. We'll see how that relationship develops. But I guess my point being that I think that relationship is one that's worth monitoring, worth paying attention to. Did want to mention that there were some injuries during Tuesday's workout. Obviously, these are practices in shorts and t-shirts. They're supposed to be non-contact. I mean, 11 on 11 drills are allowed. Certain amounts of contact are inevitable, especially in the interior offensive and defensive lines. And that play isn't going to be as physical as it could or would be with pads on, but a little bit of contact is going to happen. Things are going to happen during competitive periods of play, and the Giants suffered what looked like 3 injuries on Tuesday. Weirdly, all to wide receivers. Darius Slayton went down at one point, down on all fours, after it looked like slipping or being knocked down. We couldn't quite tell from our vantage point. Stayed down for a brief period of time and then went off the field with trainers. Slayton, to my knowledge, I didn't see him leave the practice field and go inside with a trainer, so that's good news. But he did not, go back in and take any more reps. Obviously, Slayton has been the Giants' leading wide receiver in 4 of his 5 NFL seasons, was the Giants' leading receiver again last year. So you want him healthy. You don't want him going into the summer, nicked up and not able to really get himself ready, get himself right for training camp. So fingers crossed that's a big nothing burger, that Slayton is fine. We'll see. We'll see what happens on Wednesday when the Giants take the field again. Mike, we'll see if Slayton is out there. The other 2 injuries to wide receivers were more significant, I think. And again, we don't get an injury report from the Giants. We can just judge by what we see and by the players leaving the field. Chase Cota, free agent wide receiver the Giants signed. You spent a good chunk of last season on the practice squad, I believe, for the Detroit Lions, but what I do remember is that Coda was impressive in a workout against the Giants, when the Lions and Giants worked out together, and then had a big performance in that preseason game. Coda is now with the Giants after bouncing around, I think, on a couple of practice squads last year. And Coda was actually carted off the field on Tuesday after after going down trying to catch a long pass from quarterback Nathan Rourke. Was tightly defended on the play. The ball was batted away by defensive back Caleb Hayes. Looked like Coda landed hard on that left shoulder, ended up being carted off the field. So that looked like it might be a significant injury. And unfortunately, the other injury is to a player that I know Giants fans are interested in, and that's wide receiver Bryce Ford Wheaton. Didn't see what happened to Wheaton, but I did see Wheaton with a trainer off to the side. It looked like they were looking at Wheaton's right shoulder, and Wheaton, after being quickly examined by a trainer, talking with the trainer, Wheaton did go inside with a trainer and did not return. Hopefully, we'll get more information on all of those injuries on Wednesday. Hopefully, none of them are severe, but three injuries at the same position could, at least initially, for Wednesday, could leave the Giants a little bit shorthanded in terms of how to practice. But more significantly, in particular, Slayton going off could be problematic if that's any sort of long-term injury. So we'll cross our fingers for all three of those guys that there's nothing big in terms of those injuries, and we'll let you know when we find out. All right. The other thing, I had a chance to ask head coach Brian Daboll on Tuesday about Evan Neal, who early in OTAs, in the first OTA that we saw, Neal was working during the walkthrough periods. Neal is coming back from ankle surgery. We know, performance-wise, things haven't been good for Evan the first 2 years after being the number 7 overall pick for the Giants back in 2022. Neal has a lot to prove this year as to whether or not he can actually be a functional right tackle in the NFL. And Neal was only working in the walkthrough periods, in the install periods, early in OTAs as he recuperates from off-season ankle surgery. Obviously, it was an ankle issue that pushed him to IR a year ago. What we've been told since is that it's an injury that he dealt with all season. Could be part of the reason as to why at times he didn't move very well last year, and could be part of the reasons why he struggled in year 2 at right tackle. But oddly, Neal didn't work at all in the final OTA that media had access to last week. I believe that was last Thursday. And so I had a chance to ask Brian Daboll what we would see from Evan Neal. And Daboll said, we won't see Neal at all until training camp. Said they would back off on Evan Neal. He didn't say that Neal had a setback. He didn't really indicate why, other than it's obvious that Neal is not 100% healthy. He said the Giants would back off on Neal and perhaps some other players to get them ready for training camp. We saw Neal briefly on Tuesday ride the stationary bike on the side of practice. When he was actually done riding the bike, he went back inside. So he didn't stay out on the field and watch the installs or watch practice or any of that. He did his work on the bike, and then he left the field. I don't want to read too much into the situation. Don't want to read too much into any of that. But at this point, I'm a little bit concerned about Evan Neal. I think you have to be. The young man with a brand new offensive line coach, with 2 new offensive linemen on that in that group, and Jermaine Illuminor and John Runyon Jr. The young man needs reps. He needs consistent practice. He needs time. He needs to be on the field. And just like the last 2 years when injuries were part of his story, injuries were part of the reason for his struggles, because as you develop as an NFL player, maybe you can get by without the practice. Maybe you can overcome an injury if you've got a lot of experience, if you've been in the league for 6, 7, 8 years. But as he attempts to learn, as he attempts to get comfortable, as he attempts to prove that he can be a right tackle, he needs consistent practice. He never really had that last year. He had a concussion right away in training camp, missed a lot of time, missed time on and off with the ankle injury, and eventually had to shut it down. And this year is not starting well. I mean, obviously, we're not even at training camp, that's when it will be absolutely critical for Neal and for other players to be on the field. But all of these missed reps, all of this missed time working on technique, all of this missed time, for Carmen Brasillo to be able to work with Neal, is all critical and could all be, could all ultimately lead to Neal not being the Giants' right tackle in 2024. And I know some of you will say that's a good thing, but what would be nice, what the Giants would like, I'm sure, is for Neal to at least be able to get on the field and to be able to compete for that job, to be able to develop, to be able to grow, to be able to take coaching from Carmen Brasillo, the Giants' new offensive line coach. And right now that's not happening, and that's concerning to me. We've talked a bunch of times about when the Giants might pull the plug on Neal as a right tackle, and the less he's able to get on the field, the less he's able to practice, the more likely it becomes to me that that we see that day come, perhaps sometime in training camp. But we'll see how it goes, and I'll be back out on the field at Quest Diagnostics on Wednesday to see the Giants' second practice of minicamp. So, folks, please check out all of our coverage at bigblueview.com. And please, come back to the YouTube channel for more coverage of minicamp, for more coverage of the Giants as we get you ready for 2024 training camp and the 2024 season. All right, thank you very, very much for listening. Please stay safe out there. Take care of each other, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.